It's roughly 170,000 years ago. You're a human, barely recognizable, but still. You wake up, stretch, look at the African savanna, and absolutely never think pants would complete this morning. Yet here we are, billions of people putting on clothes daily. We literally arrest people for not wearing them. The state intervenes if you're too naked. We built laws around nudity as a species. But why? When did this start? And more importantly, why did we do it when every other animal just didn't? Dogs don't wear clothes. Elephants, smarter than most people you know, never thought, I need a jacket. The short answer, we have no idea exactly when. The long answer is way more interesting and slightly weird. It involves lice, spoiler. It's exactly as gross as it sounds. But stick with it, because the lice thing is genuinely bizarre. One of the most fascinating evolutionary detective stories ever. Let's go back the Naked Ape Problem. Humans are nearly hairless, unlike almost every other large mammal. Gorillas covered, chimps covered, bears, lions, wolves, all walking around in full coats. And then there's us, smooth, patchy, weirdly pink, sporting an evolutionary look that says I used to have fur but I made choices. Scientists have theories why we lost our fur. The most popular, thermoregulation. As ancestors moved to open grasslands and ran long distances to hunt, thick fur became a liability. You'd overheat, slow down, collapse before catching dinner, and die hungry, evolution's worst outcome. So we shed our fur and developed something better, an insane number of sweat glands, 2 to 4 million. We are elite sweating machines, professional-grade, world-class moisture emitters. If sweating were an Olympic sport, we'd dominate every category. Great in summer, less great at 40 below zero. That's where clothes come in. But warmth was probably not the first reason. Here's the conventional story. Humans left Africa, got cold, wrapped themselves in animal skins. Simple, logical. Except the timeline doesn't quite work. And once you notice that, the tidy narrative unravels. Genetic evidence suggests clothing started around 100,000 to 170,000 years ago. But humans didn't migrate out of Africa until roughly 70,000 years ago. If clothes were purely for cold weather, why appear tens of thousands of years before we went anywhere cold? Something else was happening. Something social, something that has more to do with who we are than the temperature outside. But before that, we need to talk about the most unlikely evidence in clothing history. Yes, the lice. Researchers mapped the evolutionary history of human lice. Humans have two types, head lice and body lice. Head lice live in your hair. Body lice live specifically in clothing, seams, folds, fabric. They're genetically distinct populations. Body lice evolved from head lice at some specific moment. Here's why that matters enormously. Body lice cannot survive without clothes. They need fabric. They need the warmth and shelter clothing provides. So when body lice diverged from head lice, that's when humans started wearing clothes consistently. Researchers found body lice diverged between 83,000 and 170,000 years ago. Let that sink in. A parasitic insect, the thing that causes panic in elementary schools, accidentally preserved the earliest evidence of human fashion. The lice know when we got dressed before we do. They were there, they adapted, they moved in. That's either beautiful or deeply horrifying. Probably both. So what were clothes actually for first? We've established clothing predates migration out of Africa. Warmth cannot be the original driver. Theory 1, basic physical protection. Not from cold, from sun, insects, sharp vegetation. Walking through tall grass and thorny scrubland, a hide wrap creates a barrier against things that scratch, bite, or burn. Not glamorous, not philosophically interesting, but probably kept early humans more comfortable and reduced infections. Theory 2, where it gets genuinely interesting, social signaling. Humans are profoundly social animals. We're obsessed with hierarchy, constantly communicating who we are, what group we belong to, what status we hold. We do this with posture, facial expressions, voices, hairstyles, tattoos, and possibly very early on what we drape over our bodies. Evidence shows ancestors used ochre for body decoration as far back as 200,000 years ago. That's before the lice evidence for clothing. We were painting ourselves before dressing ourselves, decorating skin, then wearing hides in particular ways. Is this the hide of something powerful? Did I kill it myself? Does wearing it say something about me? Welcome to the very first fashion industry. Population, a small band of Homo sapiens arguing over who gets the leopard skin. For most early history, clothing looked rough. A skin draped over shoulders, held with twisted sinew. Functional, ungainly. The prehistoric equivalent of wearing a bin bag. Gets the job done, but nobody's winning awards. Then, around 50,000 years ago, something changed. Researchers found bone needles, with tiny eyes is for threading. Not just pointed tools, actual needles for stitching with precision. Fitted clothing, sewn seams, garments shaped to the body. The oldest confirmed needle with a proper eye was found in Siberia. Dates back 50,000 years, made from a bird's hollow bone. Shaped and polished to extraordinary fineness. This object represents a cognitive leap. Someone envisioned a tool that didn't yet exist, figured out how to bore a clean hole without splitting it. That is not survival instinct. That is engineering design thinking, solving a problem through imagination, not brute force. That needle matters more than almost any other object. You can live without pottery, without cave paintings. In Siberia, 50,000 years ago, in a glacial winter, without fitted clothing that seals heat, you absolutely cannot. The Neanderthals were doing it too. They made and wore clothes long before encountering us. We've found evidence of Neanderthals systematically processing animal hides, using tools clearly designed for working leather. They had adaptations to cold climates, stockier bodies, shorter limbs. Clothes were essential, not optional. And then there are the Denisovans, a mysterious third human lineage found only in 2010 from a single finger bone. In the same layers as the needle, researchers found pierced ornaments suggesting decoration, possibly garment embellishment. Multiple human species, different environments, arrived at similar solutions through overlapping reasoning. Is clothing a human thing or a smart bipedal primate thing? Would any sufficiently intelligent creature eventually figure it out? We don't know, but the convergence across species is very hard to dismiss. Here's the truly strange thing. If clothes were purely practical, every culture would converge on one efficient solution. Thick hides in the Arctic, light fibers in the tropics. Same shapes, same function, standardization. Done. That is categorically not what happened. Humans immediately and universally made clothing mean something. Priests wore different things than warriors. Rulers wore things nobody else was allowed. The dead were buried in specific garments suited to their status. Ceremonies required specific dress absurd in any other context. Some of the oldest textile fragments weren't just fabric. They were dyed in multiple colors. Someone thought, this needs to be a different color. Not to keep warmer, but to mean something different, to say something. This is the fundamental weirdness of human clothing. We use it as language, to construct and broadcast identity. I belong to this group. I hold this rank. I am mourning, celebrating, dangerous, available, sacred, ordinary. No other animal does this. Peacocks display. Cuttlefish change color, but they're not choosing based on social context and personal narrative. That's entirely ours. And it started in Africa around 200,000 years ago. An ancestor picked up ochre, painted themselves, and felt something click about who they were in relation to everyone else. Even if warmth wasn't the original reason, it became survival critical fast. Between 120,000 and 70,000 years ago, brutal glacial cycles hit. Global temperatures plunged, ice sheets expanded, Africa became hyper-arid. Lakes dried up, food collapsed. The human population may have crashed to between 10 and 30,000 individuals. We nearly went extinct. Clothing was no longer just social signaling. For groups pushing north into Europe and Asia, it was the thin line between life and death. Those with sophisticated clothing technology, fitted, layered, stitched, sealed at extremities, had a massive survival advantage. A properly constructed garment traps warm air, protects wrists and neck where heat escapes fastest. It allows survival in temperatures that would kill an unclothed person in hours. Those with the needle, thread, and knowledge of hide preparation made it through. Their children learned the same skills. Those skills carried forward, part of why modern humans reached every continent. We built a second skin and carried it everywhere. There's a transition often glossed over, the shift from animal hides to woven plant fibers. Hides are warm and durable, but heavy and stiff. You need to kill something to get them, a logistical constraint. At some point, humans worked with plant fibers, spinning, twisting, weaving into fabric. The oldest known twisted plant fiber was found in the Republic of Georgia, dating to roughly 30,000 years ago. Crucially, those fibers were dyed in multiple colors. Already decorative, intentional, communicating something beyond function. By the Neolithic Revolution, textile production was a core human technology. Flax cultivation, wool from sheep, cotton, silk, extraordinary variety across cultures. With textiles came the wardrobe, clothing specialized for different purposes. A heavy cloak for winter, light wrap for summer, garments for ritual, work, status, mourning. Clothing as a system of expression, not just survival. The textile industry, long before industrialization, was one of the most significant economic forces in the ancient world. Entire trade routes built on it. Empires financed by it. Wars fought over raw materials. Silk alone reshaped the political geography of half the world. All from a cold, naked primate with clever hands and a piece of bone. So why did ancient humans start wearing clothes? The honest answer, all the reasons, overlapping waves. Biology, culture, climate, social complexity. It started with practical protection, a barrier between skin and thorns, sun, biting things. Then almost immediately became social signaling, saying something about who you are. advanced. It became survival technology when the climate turned hostile and art, industry, language, identity as culture grew complex. The remarkable thing isn't that we started wearing clothes. Given who we are, it was probably inevitable. Social, symbolic, status-obsessed, freezing half the time. Whatever you're wearing right now, you made choices, conscious and unconscious, about what to put on your body. Those choices reflect something about who you are, what group you belong to. You're doing exactly what that person on the savanna did, wrapped in ochre-stained hide, figuring out how to signal something about themselves to the people around the fire. 150,000 years of human history. What connects you to them without interruption is the simple fact that you got dressed this morning. We get cold, we get creative, we get dressed, then spend the rest of our lives complaining we have nothing to wear. Some things never change.